Okay, so I'm going to take a quick moment to talk about patch 10.6 and what we're getting in set 3. So it's been a while since I've done one of these videos. I'm going to just kind of quickly give an overview as to what I think about some of the new changes that they've made, along with, I'm not going to go in depth with all the champions, but I'll talk about some of the design changes they've made and what particularly I like. So let's go through. I'll go over this cheat sheet in a bit because it talks about all the synergies, and I do want to talk about some of the new design changes that they have made with this. So they changed rank decay, don't decay below master, pretty simple. The big new change that's coming is the galaxies mechanic. So the galaxies mechanic, in case you didn't know, and it's not in this patch, it'll be in the next patch because they want to test out a couple features with it. There's going to be some unique mechanic to each game you play, and there's a handful of examples. So there's what they call the Nico Galaxy. In the Nico Galaxy, everyone starts off with 2 Nicos. So you can either hoard them until you get a tier 4, tier 5 champion to go instantly into level 2, or you can use it earlier with a tier 2, tier 3 champion to get really early rush on gold with a win streak. Another example they gave was the opening carousel will all have tier 4 champions, which is kind of insane. I'm curious how that will work out, because I'd have to think about it to figure out whether or not the economy of selling a tier 4 champion that early is worth the possible win streak if you get a really good tier 4 champion. I'm kind of under the assumption that getting a tier 4 champion that's really strong in the early game is probably better than selling said champion for the econ, but that's just going to depend on what the champions look like, and I haven't done really an in-depth study on how effective the champions are. I know a little bit about the meta, but I haven't played the PvE any. So probably the biggest change that they have made is the income. So income is getting a very significant change because you started with a lot of income in this game, and essentially that made your early rounds very linear. You would sell your tier 2 champion that you got off the carousel. You'd buy out the entire stock, the entire shop of champions. And then the next ring around, and it'd be pretty linear what you would pick to go up, unless you got gold, in which case then you'd sell to make a quick eco. So your first 3 to 4 phases were just very linear. Your choices were usually pretty obvious as to how you wanted to go. So now, since the eco has kind of been crushed to start the game, that means you're going to have to really think about what you want to take in the shop. It's going to make it more beneficial to really play more linearly, I guess, to say, where you're going to just focus on a particular synergy, and you're just going to go all in on that synergy. It does weaken a little bit trying to flex, but playing flex is still really useful because you're flexing. You can kind of shift focus to wherever you need and what's going to be efficient in the lobby. But this is a very good change in my opinion, because you're going to have to think. You can't go brain dead in the first 3 phases as most people kind of do. So the ability to remove champions. So when you're in carousel, you can sell the champion that you pick up in the carousel. They're getting rid of it because you can't do it in mobile, is my understanding, and it's kind of an unintended feature of the game right now. You're not supposed to be able to do it, but you can't do it on mobile. So if you can't do it on mobile, they're not going to let you do it on the current client. Streak changes. This isn't overly significant, but what it does mean is that your win streaks are just going to get you more gold. So the idea is they want you to win streak more than forcibly lose streaking, which became a problem in Blender, where you were forcibly lose streaking in order to get Blender. It made it easier for you to get Spatula and get a Blender online and just let Blender carry you to victory. They want to make win streaking more efficient, which is also part of this one, where win streak now pays in PvE rounds. It basically makes lose streaking much weaker, because you're not going to intentionally lose a PvE round, because missing out on items is bad. Shop changes, because I don't really know what the what the current meta exactly looks like in terms of shops. I'm not quite sure how significant this is going to be. But there are a couple points to note out. I'm not sure why they changed the level 7 legendary to 1%. I'd prefer it to be like 4 or 0. And the reason for that, 3 or 4 or 0, I'd say. The reason for that is because from what I've seen of the new set, the tier 5 champions are brutal. You can pretty much just play nothing but tier 5 champions and completely stomp people, because the tier 5 champions are just that good in this new set. So I'm not overly thrilled with this, because this means that somebody early in level 7 just like gets a miraculous roll of a tier 5 just appearing in their shop, and it's like snap, buy, throw in field, and that can carry you pretty far in my opinion. Otherwise, no real big changes here. I thought this one might mean something, going significantly increasing the tier 4 champions you can get at level 9, but I mean, it's level 9. It's not really that big a deal. There's really not much else on here with exception to this early drop from 20 to 14. So if you're holding on to a tier 2 on your bench to try to get not a tier 2. If you're holding on to a 2-star on your bench to try to get a 3-star of some champion you have in the field, if you're still doing that after level 7, that's probably wrong. You should probably have dumped that before in level 6, because it's going to be really hard to complete that champion. You can get that 3-star unit out on the field. Probably the other big change is the base damage. So essentially what's changed here is, and you can look at the numbers, what's changed. It's big in the end, less in the beginning. You don't get smoked in the early game and just kind of get rolled from there. I've done that quite a bit, where I just take damage infinitely and then try to take my mass lose streak to build something that's functional to get out of my mass lose streak. Usually I fail. But the idea here is they want to make it more beneficial to be winning than losing. The lose streak is a comeback mechanic. It's not meant to make you... It's not meant to be your baseline strategy for how you win. The other change is this part down here, and part of the reason why these numbers go up so significantly, because it used to be that each surviving unit's damage that it dealt was based on its star level and its cost. So like a 4 cost, a 2-star tier 4 unit would do maybe 5 damage. Well, now every unit only does 1 damage. So it scales to be about kind of slightly lower than what they're changing it to. So in the end game, essentially, you're going to be taking a lot more damage. It's not going to be significantly a lot more damage, but it's going to be more damage. This also helps at the end game when you get like 2 players that basically win streak their way all the way up, and they both have 60 HP, and they have to play through another 10 rounds to finish out their game. It should help a good bit. Loot drops. Yeah, this was kind of an issue to me. Sometimes you would just get gold when you felt like you could just get champions that were worth more gold. So getting gold always kind of felt bad. You just wanted champions, because the champions could either be champions on your bench or champions you can sell for more gold. And that always felt weird. Nico's help, 33%. Less drop from all boxes. That's probably good. Nico comes up a bit too much in my opinion, so this is a nice change. Champion movement reduced by 500. That, because I don't know exactly how the set is going to function, I'm not sure how significant that change is going to be. Essentially, that means your big beef tank characters are going to have a harder time running up to bash things in the face, while some of your speedy teleporter types or your long-range spellcasters get a little bit of benefit from that. More smoothly move hex to hex, nice. Melee champions move forward. So essentially what they mean is that you're going to get a move command sooner than you get an attack command. So your unit's going to be moving before they attack rather than they're going to try to attack and then move. It's kind of just an optimization thing in programming. This was another one that people kind of got... It drove people kind of crazy. So you'd have a unit that you're attacking and then the unit moves out of range and it would just kind of chase forever, even though it couldn't ever catch up to it, especially if it was a melee champion. Now you'll get target switching, so it'll chase for 1 hex and then it'll switch targets. This was pretty important when you were like running berserkers, because berserkers, even though their attack was AoE, they had to actually like hit something in range. So you would have your Olaf just kind of trying to chase something down, and the problem with Olaf chasing something down is because then he's neither building his ult, nor, if he has the ult, is he hitting anything to regain health, which often would be a problem. Mana gain for attacking star level is standardized now. Good change. So people have asked what this kind of means. So my opinion on what this means, because I'm not 100% sure myself, this means that when you're casting a spell, sometimes it can be canceled for one reason or another. You get hit with a stun or you get blasted with something. So if you get stunned like really early in a cast now, you keep your mana and you can try to cast that spell again. I'm assuming that's what that means. Can't guarantee that's what it means, but that's my assumption. Carousel is all 1-cost champs. Kind of like I said before, 2-cost champs kind of instantly get sold for the gold, so you can just buy the entire shop the next round, or the first phase. Carousels have more possibilities on items. They put spat back in carousel. I'm not 100% sure this is going to be an issue, because the problem with spat was when we gave things particular traits that became troublesome. So Blade Master was the obvious one in the last set. When things were made Blade Master that were not supposed to be Blade Master, they started swinging really fast and became really strong. Could that be a problem in this set? Don't really know. Haven't played the PBE, haven't really gone in depth on all of the champions, so could be a problem, might not be a problem. Spat on carousel, Like, if you had the item, if you already had the item you wanted with the spat, you would normally take the spat, but if you didn't, there was often a better item to take. That was kind of always my opinion on spat and carousel. The only time it became an issue was when we had blender. So you would just grab it and just try to make blender as soon as possible. Full item carousels can show up early in the 5th round. I've seen this before, where I think it was the 3rd round, a carousel had entirely full items, and I was like blown away at this. So that can happen. It'll be a little odd because like you're expecting to be able to try to complete some items, so you'll have in your mind a bunch of items you want, and then all of a sudden pops up this entire thing of full carousel items. I think what they'll end up doing is they'll probably end up splitting this with what we have down here. Components can show up in the 6th carousel and beyond. I think that's probably what's going to end up happening. I know they probably don't want to do that early, because if you have a carousel that's not entirely full items and you still have all 8 players left in the game, then you'll have people getting full items and people getting components, and that's fairly imbalanced. You really don't want that. But I think at some point what they'll do is they'll start throwing like full items and components on carousels, but not until someone has already left the game. I think in the end that's the direction they're going to end up going, but this, I think, overall is probably a better change. Or it'll make the game better, is what I should say. I think getting full items earlier in the game is kind of a new excitement, and will allow people who are far back early in the game a better chance at coming back in, because they got a nut item that for their build, or the nut item they got will actually make them go for a specific build. And new carousel possibilities. Yeah, I've seen some weird carousels. I don't think they're going to do the all of single component carousel, where the entire carousel had one component. That was frustrating for people, from what I heard. A few other changes. So adding 5 seconds for the new set. It's a new set. Everyone's gonna have to read everything. And everyone wants more time. Healing reduction. So healing wasn't a significant thing in the previous set, outside of like Olaf and some Yasuo Hand of Justice builds. So putting this in makes me think there's a lot more healing mechanics in the new set. Even though from what I first saw, it didn't seem like there was a lot, but there did seem to be some. Disarm no longer prevents casting spells. That is good. Disarm is no longer both hush and disarm. Silence and disarm, I guess I should say. It's a good change. AP scaling works on everything now. Yay. Item combine rules. So, this is a neat trick you could do with elemental hexes. If you had a hero on elemental hexes, you could pop items off that hero, and no one was quite sure how it worked. So what you would do is you would put a champion with items on an elemental hex, so like a full set of items on an elemental hex, have it combine to become up the next star level, and one item would just randomly pop off, and no one knew how it worked. So now we kind of get a good setting on priority list on how this works. So Thieves' Gloves pops off first, then some random full item, then some random components. Easy stuff. And then some bug fixes, changes to high attack speed guys actually like acting as intended. Item changes. Hush is dead. Rip Hush. Maybe. Depends on how often you use Hush. Like me. And that became Chalice of Favor, which I believe when you ult, you give two nearby item allies mana. This is probably a pretty shit item unless you have a champion that just ults endlessly. Iceborne Gauntlet has been changed, so that becomes Shroud of Stillness, which all champions in the column of whatever champion you put it in, their first mana cost, I believe it's only the first. It says increases costs for the start of a round, so I'm assuming it's just your first cost. It increases the cost of their mana by 40%. So it's going to delay that all units in that column's time before they ult off on top of you. This is actually a good item to die, because this was an annoying item to play against, and it was kind of a sad item to have to make. Same thing with Titanic Hydra. It just wasn't that great an item. There's just better things you can make. Anyway, that becomes a portal, which summons a massive health minion when that champion dies. This will be an interesting item to watch, because it's a lot of HP on that minion. So that thing can just like eat damage while the rest of your carries just like beat on face. Alright, existing item changes. Bloodthirster
down to 35% healing.
This item might be terrible now. Don't guarantee on that, but this item might actually be terrible. I've been told that this Deathblade change is actually ridiculous. So Deathblade started at 1 stack, now it starts at 2 stacks. So you automatically get damage buff just off the fact that you have it equipped, because it has 2 stacks now. I've been told this is really good, and that there's a lot of champions that significantly benefit in the new set from this change. Same thing with the next one, Giant Slayer. Giant Slayer goes from 9% to 12%, which is actually ridiculous. Some of the blaster builds I've seen, you just put Giant Slayers on, and it's just kind of like laugh. You just laugh at the damage you get. Hexblade nerf, same with Bloodthirster. Hexblade was kind of always not a great item anyway. It might be more viable on some champions than Bloodthirster now, because it's Hexblade, so it works on spells too, while Bloodthirster only works on like actual attacks, and like physical damage. Ionic Spark reduces MR by 50%. This item might actually be useful now. There's some other changes to it if I'm correct, but this might actually be a useful item. I never made Ionic Spark because I thought it was terrible, but if it's reducing MR by 50%, that's pretty relevant. Morello Burn's getting buffed. I'm not going to say anything about that. Oh my god, I don't know. They must think Morello is terrible in this new set to make this change. I have no idea if that's actually true or not, but that's kind of absurd. Quicksilver is giving a time limit on its CC. So Quicksilver went from being kind of a trap item that wasn't very good to then they just gave you full CC immunity, and it became kind of one of the better items in the game that was only useful on a handful of champions, because if a handful of champions didn't stop attacking, they just murdered everything. Now it's going down to 15 seconds. So 15 seconds is quite a long period of time to be immune to CC. Most importantly, it keeps you immune to Zephyr, which is very important with Quicksilver. I think this is I was worried when I first saw this that this was going to be too much of a nerf to Quicksilver, and Quicksilver was going to be kind of awful, and it was just going to be like a worse Trap Claw. But as I've thought about it, it's probably okay, because 15 seconds is exceptionally long. Anyway, next, Deathcap got nerfed to the ground. Like, this is actually a huge nerf to Deathcap. This was probably not your most optimal item to build in a lot of your mage builds, even though it's, or your magic-based builds, your ult-based builds. It's probably still okay, but this is a really heavy hit. Red buff burn got buffed up because Morello got buffed up, and they've said, Riot has said particularly that they're going to keep these two the same at all times, so leave it at that. Redemption, so when the Redemption hero dies, it now heals the entire team. It's no longer that circle that never hit anything you actually wanted to hit because everything was not there when it died. Now heals your entire team 800 HP. Don't know if this is a nut item, but this is an item to keep your eye on, because this item could be very good. Buff to Hurricane. Hurricane's Hurricane. It's going to do it at once. Shiv got nerfed because we realized... I'm assuming because of Chrono synergy. So Chrono synergy, as you attack more, as the battle goes longer, all of your Chrono units attack faster. I'm assuming that is why we're getting this, is because it's going to crush everything. Warmog's getting a pretty decent nerf. It's still a good item, but if you made an early game Warmogs, it was kind of ridiculous because that unit was just unkillable, especially if you threw it on a Braum. Completely unkillable. Zeke's is trash. I would never play it. Zephyr Banish goes down to 5 seconds from 6. The idea here is that Zephyr is supposed to be a skill-based item, but 6 seconds is really excessive. So we'll leave it at that. I'm not going to talk about the new things that are coming in the client. People can explore those and make up their own minds about that. We're getting a season pass, and they're changing how EXP gets. I just want to kind of focus on the balancing things. So skip past trades and items. Okay. So we'll talk quickly about some of the new design features in this set. Hopefully this loads up nicely. Good enough. Can I zoom in on it? Who cares? Anyway, so new origins and new classes. So the big thing that I've seen from the new design philosophies that they have here is one of the things they did in set 2 was there was a lot of 2, 4, 6 synergies. So if you had 2 of something, you got a synergy. If you had 4, it would be better. If you had 6, it would be something crazy. They seem to be shifting away from that. There's still a few of those, but they seem to be shifting more towards 2, 4. Just pure 2, 4. So you'll see 6 champions, and it's just 2, 4. I really like this. I really, really like this, because one of the issues I have with set 2 is oftentimes your composition builds fairly linearly. You kind of just have a chart that you go down, and do I have XYZ, then go this way. It ends up being kind of a pick-your-own adventure. You don't really have a lot of freedom in that with that kind of mindset. You just, I see this, I go with this. You don't get to change a lot in the middle of your build. At the end of the game, it's a little different because you can have 6 of something, you'll be able to change your flexes around. But in the mid game, you're just sitting on, well, I have 3 Inferno, 3 Shadow. Do I go Inferno, Shadow? Oh, I found Brand. I'll go Inferno. Actually, that's probably not how it goes, because Brand's pretty terrible if you're not playing Mage. It's probably more like, oh, I got Xion tier 2, I am all in on Shadow. Or I got Master Yi, I'm all in on Shadow. That's typically, in my opinion, how it works. But what's changed here is a lot more of these synergies are 2/4s, where you're going to get the synergy at 2, you're going to get the synergy at 4. Or there's a lot more just pure get 3 synergies, kind of like how Predators worked. But the thing with Predators was an early game build that you just used to carry you to victory, whereas a lot of the 3s in this seem to be more get late game and get big uber unit to crush things. So I really like this new design philosophy of going 2/4s rather than 2/4/6. Also, your 2 synergies seem to be pretty decent. If the 2/4/6s that they have now, your 2 and your 4 are actually pretty good. Whereas one of the issues I often had with set 2 was that your 2 and your 4 were kind of meh, but your 6 was kind of nuts. So you always just kind of ran for 6 rather than trying to split it up and go for 2/4. Or just get multiple 2s, multiple 4s, and just kind of flex your build as you go. So I really like these changes. I'm really happy with them. And I can't wait to experiment with them next week. Or I'm not sure when I'm going to get some time to play. Maybe Friday. So, I'm looking forward to it. I hope everyone else is looking forward to it. And I'll see y'all around whenever you want to keep playing TFT. Peace.